Mark Taylor. Mark. If you'd state your name and address for the record, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Mark Taylor, 192-912 Sycamore Circle. I wasn't even going to speak tonight until I saw on the agenda the TVOS presentation, and then I felt like I had to say something. So I'm going to respond to that, TVOS and how KCS uses it. What I'm going to explain is just one of many ways in which KCS and team use TVOS in a way that is completely unfair and harmful to teachers. What I hope you take away from this is the fact that KCS has made TVOS and test scores the single most important factor in KCS. Even when that data is used in absurdly unfair ways, and even when that absurdity is recognized by administrators in central office. I think we all know William Sanders by now, the creator and developer of TVOS, who was cited many times in tonight's presentation. I posed the following questions to Dr. Sanders. I said, Dr. Sanders, if a teacher teaches 5 classes, but only one of them is a TCAP tested subject, is the resulting TVOS data from that one class accurate and complete to use to evaluate that teacher? His response, and I quote, for an overall evaluation of the effectiveness of the teacher to facilitate student academic progress, of course not. I then asked Dr. Sanders, does this situation reflect an accurate use of TVOS data, and does this situation constitute the intended use of TVOS data? Dr. Sanders' response, quoted again, to attempt to use this one class as a measure of a teacher's overall effectiveness, then no. So we have the creator of TVOS saying that KCS is using TVOS to evaluate teachers in a way that's not fair or accurate. And here's the most troubling aspect of this. KCS has known about this for over 3 years. They've known what Dr. Sanders feels about this. They've known that this is not being used the right way, and they've not one change has been made to do what's right for teachers or students. One change was made, however, and that was that Knox County decided to have students who don't have TVOS TCAP data take a TCAP test over a subject that they're not even taught or not even enrolled in. This is just one example of many that illustrates KCS' misguided philosophy of putting data before common sense and of putting data ahead of doing what is best for students and teachers. I was going to stop there until the physical science got brought up. And there was a lot of misinformation going back and forth in regards to that. I'm going to tell you what happened to start that debate. When physical science in 8th grade first started, I was one of the few teachers that did it. And the difference is I had 5 total classes. 4 of those were physical science. The 8th grade class for which they receive, or the 9th grade, the high school class, physical science, that they receive high school credit for. I had one class which was an inclusion class of regular science. So that first year, everybody made the right decision and said, well, these kids aren't taking the TCAP curriculum. Why should we give them the TCAP? And so they didn't take the TCAP. Well, guess what that did to our school's TCAP scores? When we have all the top science kids in the school, the top 8th grade science, they're scoring 100s, 99s, advanced across the board, take those out of the pool, and guess what happens to that school's TCAP scores for science? Obviously, it went down. So after that, the principals were asked whether those kids should take the TCAPs or not. What do you think their response was? I mean, principals know. I mean, they understood what happened to my school. Their science scores went way down, and they didn't want that, obviously. Also, the other physical science teachers that were now involved in physical science were also asked that same question. And they saw what happened to me. Oh, by the way, I got a 1 that year on my TVOS. Surprisingly, huh? So the other physical science teachers saw what happened to me. What do you think their vote was? They didn't want it to be in my shoes, so of course they said, well, yeah, these kids need to take it too. So that's how we got to that decision. So here's what happens now. Now we have physical science teachers who have seen what happens to me and told and understand that their TVOS score is going to count. So here's their options. They can really push these kids and really go deep into the curriculum, really have meaningful learning, or they can dumb it down to the 8th grade level. Not that that might not be the best choice of words, but instead of pushing those kids to their most potential and going as deep as they can, they're forced to choose between doing that or doing what's going to get them the best TVOS scores possible. So that's what's happening. So when we hear that that's not an issue anymore, that's not true. What we've done is we're stopped pushing these kids, and we've brought them back down here, because if we don't, those kids are not going to do well on the TCAP. As far as improving those kids, I teach all physical science now and have for the last 2 years. Those kids do great on the TCAPs. In 7th grade, they're making hundreds and 99s. Well, they're not being taught the 8th grade curriculum in 8th grade. So now instead of making hundreds and 99s, they're making 99s and 98s, which is great for the school. I mean, they're all advanced. They're all scoring advanced. But what do you think that does to my TVOS? Again, I'm a 1 now for the 2nd year in a row. Okay? Even though my kids take a high school EOC that we have data for from year to year, so in addition to all the high school requirements, these 8th graders are also being required to take this TCAP, and it goes into their grade. So they're being subject to much more as far as making the best grade they can than they would be if they were in a high school class. Is that fair to the kids? That's 15% of their grade over a curriculum that they're not even taught or enrolled. To say that their curriculum overlaps. I am so tired of hearing there's overlap. It's just an excuse to say it's close enough. That's fine. To say that it's been added into the curriculum is not right. It's been added into the pacing guide, which Dr. McIntyre recently expressed is an optional thing.
Mr. Taylor, you're about finished.
Yeah, I'm about finished. Thank you. So here we have this curriculum. It's not in their curriculum. It's in the optional pacing guide. But the reality is, the teachers teaching this are forced to make a decision between what do they need to do to keep their job or what's better to push these kids. And that's not a choice I'm willing to make. I've had administrators and coaches tell me on numerous occasions that I need to stop putting my kids ahead of myself. Administrators and coaches have told me, word for word, you need to put yourself ahead of your kids. That is offensive and disgusting to me as a teacher to be told that by an administrator. I've been told, you need to stop teaching these kids up here and bring them back down to the level of the 8th grade TCAP. And I promise you, the day I put myself ahead of my students is the day that I don't need to be in my classroom.
Thank you. Tanya Coates. Ms. Coates, would you state your name and address for the record, and you have up to 5 minutes.